Time for a little more serious work. The rear derailleur has a problem. Has a pretty serious problem. The lower cage here twisted. So we need to straighten that up. We're going to attempt a repair here. A little more detail on that in a moment. The body actually looks fine. The upper pulley was pretty fine in its placement. But the bottom one, obviously, here we have a severe bend in our cage, so we'll see what we can do about that. First thing we're going to begin with, though, is the frame. We have our derailleur alignment gauge, DAG2, in place. We're going to go straight down and check our alignment here. The wheel is a bit out of true, if we recall the wheel work. It's not a perfect wheel, but if we go to the same point and check our measurements, we can run our gauge up right to that seam. We can check straight up and see that we're pretty darn good. That is a very, very small gap right here. Not even worth messing with. We're going to come back here. So the hanger apparently did not get damaged. It is quite a thin neck here. This is the area that you're bending when you're using this tool. You're not bending the dropout where the wheel's clamped. You're bending this narrow area here. So this hanger appears to be in pretty good shape. So let's go ahead and remove this and come over and install our derailleur. The lower bolt has been temporarily replaced. This is the original one. We stuck this rather crude one in place because that's going to be where we grab and twist. So we didn't want to scar up the beautiful Campagnolo. We wanted to scar up this one, then we'll replace it. Show you how that works in a second. The upper bolt was supplied by Butch of the SRAM neutral support, but unfortunately it's actually a little bit long. It's a slightly different model it was intended for, but we were able to use some shims. We are able to get this to work, so we still had to do some finagling there. The shims aren't terribly beautiful, but I think they're okay. We're not going to see them much. So I think if we stand back here, you can hardly tell that's shimmed. So we're going to go with that. From the back view here, we can see the lower problem. The body is moving fine. The upper cage is actually not too bad. The upper pulley, rather, not too bad. It's this lower one that we need to twist back into shape. To do this, we're going to grab this secure, good old-fashioned vice grip, and we're going to get that quite tight. And this is why we're doing it this way. With the pulleys in place and we're twisting, it's actually easier to twist these back on the bike. If we took this cage apart, we certainly could. If we rebend this cage separately from this cage, if the inner cage and outer cage are straightened separately, getting these two holes to line back up exactly would be tricky. So that's why we're rebending it in this fashion. So first thing we're going to do is come across this plane here. Got to think about the direction of the bend here. And let's come back and let's see if we hear any loud snapping noises. That would be a sign of death for the derailleur there. No snapping. Metal, when rebent in this fashion, is actually hardening. It's work hardening by bending. There's not a lot of stress on these cages, so in this case, this is a situation where if it survives the repair, it's going to survive the use. So we're better. I think we're quite a bit better. The two pulleys are nice. This cage is tweaked in, deformed toward the pulley, or rather outward from the mid-plane of the bike toward the pulley. This one as well is deformed, but I think our two pulleys are looking pretty good. A little more fine-tuning is needed. We've had to remove the lower bushing. The lower pulley, we're going to replace it with just the bolt and a bushing so that we're not collapsing anything here. We're going to use the bolt, a separate bolt again, the one that we can pinch and mangle on, and then we'll replace the Campagnolo one later. We have to get in there. I have to move these apart a second. Slide this in place. And so, and our bushing, and another spacer just to take up room. And again, importantly, that these two are securely snug to one another. Let's try a 5mm here. Okay. There. So even though there's no pulley now, the reason we had to pull this out of the way is we need to get in there and rebend. We're going to try and pull this away. Get in here with some needle nose vice grips and see if we can pry that back. And that's looking pretty good. Let's do a little more work on the top. That one's going to take a little more effort. Still trying to get this thing straight, or straight enough. The vice grip got a little bit of action. We're going to have to go to the good old-fashioned adjustable wrench. Try and see where our bend is coming in. Clamp accordingly. See if we can do a little tweaking at a time. Not so bad. And this is, of course, one advantage of our friction shifting. We have a good bit of leeway here once we're moving. Let's see, we're moving pulley to cog here, pulley to cog there. That's not so bad. We got good spoke clearance. I bet we're okay. We are pointing straight to our chain rings. This lower one is a little bit worrisome. I think I want to come a little bit this way with both of them. And again, that's why we've left that bolted together there. So now I think it's time to go back to the lower pulley. Boy, we can see how that's coming up and out. Yep, I think that's going to be an issue. So, go over to a different choice of tool. Let's see if we can squeeze those a little bit in. Well, let's get the pulley in there, and then we'll see what happens. We won't know fully until we are shifting with our chain. Everything's set to go, and we see some internal tension that moved over, but not so worried about that. Our new used pulley, certainly in good shape. These are fairly normal looking teeth. They get very pointed. That's when we start to worry. So let's go back in with the good looking Campagnolo screw, the M5 here, and see how it's going to line up. There we are. It is going into an aluminum thread, so we do not want to over tighten that. This top one will also need to be tightened. And cage a little funny. The two pulleys are nicely aligned. So we have good results there. This one worries me here in terms of chain rub. So I think for now that's adequate until we get a chain in place, and then we'll see what transpires.